This is very exciting. I'm about to talk to Paul Kelly, the Research and Apiary Manager from the University of Guelph's Honey Bee Research Center. Full business card is what we were just talking about. But you're joining me to break down why bees are so essential. Thank you so much for taking time to just chat with me and share all of your knowledge.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Sarah. Once you get into bees, you just can't stop talking about them. So all us beekeepers are always keen to be talking about bees.
I just want to give you an idea of how excited I was to talk to you. You know how, okay, so picture this. You're out on a Friday night, you're maybe having a few beverages, and then someone the next morning texts you a video of yourself, and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to watch this. That recently happened to me, but the video of me was me ranting about how smart bees are. Bees are so smart.
And at that moment, you knew a lot about bees, didn't you?
I mean, I thought I did.
All right. Well, let's just check and see whether those were facts or fiction you were talking about there.
Well, so what I really wanted to pick your brain about today is, why do we keep hearing "Save the Bees"? You know, we hear it in ads. It's on Cheerio boxes now. What's happening to the bees?
So bees and plants co-evolved. I'm going to get into the history a little bit here. Bees were necessary to pollinate the plants, and then the plants rewarded the bees with pollen and nectar for doing that service. So without bees, many plants would not be able to be reproduced, and in a lot of plants, fruit is produced as part of that reproduction process. So without bees, a third of the food that we eat and the most nutritious component of our diet would be missing. All bees are important for pollination. They get all their food from flowers. So they get nectar for their energy, pollen for their protein, and that's all they need. But there are well over 400 species of bees just in Ontario, over 20,000 species of bees on the planet. And we work with honeybees, so one of those species. So our honeybees are really valuable for pollination for agriculture. Many of the other bees, the solitary bees and some social bees, other social bees like bumblebees, are really important for pollinating native plants and plants in the wild. But honeybees do a bit of both. They're kind of generalists, and so they work on crops and they work in the wild as well. And of the pollination for human food, 80% of that is done by honeybees. So we work with honeybees to help them provide that pollination.
Can you paint a picture of how in danger or at risk they really are? Like, why do we keep hearing this message being driven?
I'm uncomfortable with the term decline.
Okay.
Because we actually have more beehives in Canada than we've ever had. So it's kind of a little bit of a contradictory message there, but that doesn't mean that we don't have significant problems. We used to lose 10 to 15% of our colonies each year. The colonies would die, and then we have to make up for those losses. Now we average about 35% losses, and some years we've had losses as high as 60% of our colonies. So it's been really tough for beekeepers to keep things going along. But there are enough economic opportunities for beekeepers that there's been an incentive to keep going. So we just get back to work and increase our colony numbers with a lot of hard work and effort, but we divide the hives that survive to be able to replace the ones that we lose. So that means they don't produce as much honey because they're smaller. We've had to divide them. But we are able to get back in the game by dividing the hives and getting our colony numbers up.
Now, what would be some of the causes for these colonies dying?
There's basically, I'm going to give you the summary first, and then I'll break it down. Bees are overwhelmed with too many problems. It's not one single problem. They have a relatively simple immune system internally, and then externally they use behavior to help them defeat microorganisms and parasites and so on. So uh, really what's happened is they've become overwhelmed with too many problems. Climate change, parasites, pathogens, pesticides, and people. So all those are the P's. We actually study bees, but we study peas too. But and they're all at varying levels of importance. Some years, climate can be the most significant thing. If we have a really, really harsh winter, that can be tough on them. But what's even tougher is a cold spring. And we've had 3 cold springs in a row this year, or, as of this year. And so that's been really challenging for bees because they're trying to build up their populations. They try and get out to flowers and get nectar and pollen to build up the hive strength again. And when it's cold, they just can't get out and do that. And the plants don't produce when it's cold either. So, but other examples would be extreme weather where you have long droughts. That can be tough for bees too. The pesticides are a significant issue, but they're not our only issue. And unfortunately, it's become kind of a political thing where some people have painted pesticides as our only problem, and they're just one problem. But our most significant problem is a parasitic mite that came from another species of bees. So our bees had no natural resistance to it. They didn't evolve together. And so if we wait 10,000 years, our bees will probably be pretty good at dealing with those parasites, but that's a long wait. So we're attempting to do things to help breed for resistance to the parasite. And we're using natural chemicals, things like thymol from the plant thyme, oreganol from the plant oregano, oxalic acid, it's in rhubarb, tea, coffee. So we're using some natural products and coming up with materials that will kill the mite, but not kill the bee, and they're safe for use around humans.
So knowing that there are many peas and people are one of them, what can we as people do to help the population, even in our backyard?
Well, when I say people can be the problem, I'm thinking mostly of climate change in that regard.
What about growing wildflowers in our own backyard? Is that something that could help even a little bit?
Yeah, we're going to stick with that P with people there. There's a lot of things that non-beekeepers can be doing too. Growing flowers that benefit bees can help a lot. One honeybee colony forages over an area of 7,000 acres. So just picture that. That's 3-kilometer radius in every direction. And so they forage over a huge range of land.
Is that why they're called busy bees?
Well, that's it. They're able to communicate where the best resources are. So when they come back from flowers, if they found a really good patch of flowers, they just can't wait to tell all the other bees where to go. And they do this little waggle dance and tell the other bees where to go to get to that patch of flowers. So if we grow flowers in our backyard, that helps. It particularly helps native solitary bees because they'll work at the one flower here, the one flower there, and they only forage very close to home. And so a lot of backyard gardens help native bees even more than they do honeybees. And it's important that we help all bees. So those backyard gardens are great. But I'd like people to think a little bit beyond garden flowers and think about trees that they plant, shrubs that they plant, and other landscapes out in the environment like roadsides, industrial properties. There's a lot of land out there that could be dedicated more for bee pasture that we really need to be working away at. Trees are great because they're there, you plant them and they're there for at least 100 years. And they have lots of flowers on them. Many trees like maple, people wouldn't even realize that bees work on, but maple trees are a great resource for bees. Roadsides, if you look around here in the city of Guelph, because we're not spraying lawns and roadsides within the city, plants just voluntarily grow that benefit bees. It's like magic. They pop up out of the ground as soon as we stop using herbicides. And if we let them grow, there's a fantastic resource with really doing nothing. We just don't do anything and it all works out. But there's plants that grow on the roadsides like bird's foot trefoil. And I'd like everybody to learn what bird's foot trefoil is. It's so abundant in our environment, but most people don't know what it is. So when you go out, look for little yellow flowers in lawns and roadsides that are blooming right now. That's bird's foot trefoil.
I
And
think that might be what's on my lawn right now.
yeah, I'm sure you do. Another plant that grows up in lawns is white Dutch clover, little wee white clover flowers. Fantastic resource for bees. So all of these areas that are no longer sprayed are perfect bee pastures. So it's a good news story that we don't really hear about.
Now, can I pick your brain about one more question?
Sure.
Just as a vegan, and you said you were just collecting honey right before we started
Right.
this interview. Honey is a very blurred line for vegans, and
Yes.
whether people eat it or don't eat it. How much honey essentially is a hive producing? Like, are we stealing their food when we eat their honey? I really don't know any of the answers to this.
That's kind of it. This is a gray area for sure. But as beekeepers, of course, we think we're taking the high road here. But when we manage our colonies, that first of all wouldn't exist without us managing them. When we manage those colonies, our goal is to keep them alive forever. Like, so we're really trying to do, if our hives all die because we're not managing them well, that's not in our interest or the bees' interest. So it is a symbiotic relationship between bees and beekeepers. We do make sure they have an abundant source of food. If bees die because they've starved, that's bad beekeeping. Like, you're really doing something wrong if you allow that to happen. But if we manage them well, they can produce a surplus of honey, which we can harvest. I'd encourage people to have a look at our Honeybee Research Center website. We've got lots of information about bee plants there.
You really do. I was all over the website before I reached out to you and was blown away
Okay.
by how accessible it is and how much you can learn on there. But like I said, I could be picking your brain for an entire day. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Sarah, and keep up the great work with your sustainability work.
Oh, thank you. Good luck collecting the rest of the honey today.
Okay, sounds good. I'll get back at it.